When a devoted single father agrees to a blind date to make his daughter happy, he never expects to meet a woman who changes their lives forever. But one innocent whisper from his little girl turns a simple dinner into an unforgettable moment that melts even the coldest CEO's heart. Daniel Ross had always been a man of routine. Wake up before dawn, make pancakes with extra syrup for his daughter Lily, drop her off at school, and then spend the next 10 hours fixing cars at his small-town garage. Life wasn't easy as a single dad, but he wouldn't have traded it for anything. Ever since losing his wife to an illness 4 years ago, Lily had become his world. Her laughter filled the empty corners of his heart, and her small hand in his reminded him every day that love still existed, even if it wasn't the kind he once knew. Romance for Daniel had become a forgotten dream, tucked away somewhere between unpaid bills and bedtime stories. That was, until his sister Claire decided to meddle in his love life. "You can't live on oil and coffee forever, Danny," she teased. "You need someone who'll make you smile again." And before he could protest, she had already arranged a blind date with someone perfect for him. The date was set at a cozy Italian restaurant in town, the kind with candles on every table and soft jazz playing in the background. But as luck would have it, that was the exact night everything went wrong. First, a customer showed up 5 minutes before closing, begging Daniel to fix a broken radiator. Then Lily spilled her juice all over his one decent shirt, giggling as she handed him a towel. "You look handsome, Daddy," she said innocently. "The lady will like you." That simple comment tugged at Daniel's heart, reminding him why he was even doing this, not for himself, but for her. He wanted Lily to see that her father could still laugh, still love, still hope. By the time he finally arrived at the restaurant, he was 30 minutes late, slightly sweaty, and still had traces of motor oil on his sleeves. The hostess gave him a pitying look as she pointed him toward a table near the window. There she was, Ava Sinclair. Her posture was perfect, her dress sleek and elegant, her expression unreadable. She was scrolling through her phone, one hand resting gracefully on a half-empty glass of wine. When Daniel approached, he could feel the heat rising to his cheeks. "I'm so sorry," he began, his voice earnest. "I got held up at work and my daughter—" "You're late," Ava interrupted coolly, her tone calm but clipped. "I was about to leave," Daniel swallowed hard, forcing a polite smile. "I understand." "I wouldn't blame you," but something in his sincerity made Ava pause. His words weren't excuses. They were simple truth. She studied him for a moment. The tired eyes, the humble manner, the way he seemed both nervous and grounded at once. "You mentioned a daughter?" she asked finally. He nodded. "Lily, she's 6. She told me to smile tonight, so I'm trying." That caught Ava off guard. For the first time all evening, a faint smile touched her lips. Maybe, she thought, this wouldn't be such a wasted night after all. Ava Sinclair had built her life on precision, every meeting scheduled to the minute, every decision calculated, every emotion carefully contained. To the outside world, she was the formidable CEO of Sinclair Industries, a corporate empire that stretched across continents. But behind the headlines and power suits was a woman who had learned to survive by never letting her heart lead the way. Her father's sudden death 5 years ago had thrown her into the center of a company filled with sharks, and she had clawed her way to the top with grit and sleepless nights. Relationships, love, vulnerability, those were luxuries she could not afford. Yet sitting across from Daniel Ross, a man who arrived late and smelled faintly of motor oil, Ava felt a peculiar warmth in her chest. It wasn't attraction at first, more like curiosity, the kind she hadn't felt in years. He was the opposite of every man she'd ever known, unpolished, gentle, and completely unpretentious. As the evening unfolded, their small talk slowly transformed into something real. Daniel apologized again for being late, explaining how his work at the auto shop often kept him on his feet till dark. "I'm not exactly the candlelight dinner type," he said with a sheepish grin. "But I do know how to fix an engine faster than most." Ava chuckled softly, surprised by her own reaction. "And your daughter, Lily, was it? She must keep you busy." Daniel's entire face lit up at her name. "She does," he said proudly. She's everything. Some days I'm exhausted, but then she'll say something funny or draw me a picture, and suddenly, the world doesn't seem so heavy. Ava listened in silence, watching how his eyes softened when he spoke about his little girl. There was something pure in it, love without condition, devotion without expectation. It stirred something she thought long buried. Wanting to shift the focus off herself, Ava hesitated before sharing her own story. "My father started Sinclair Industries from nothing," she said, her voice lower now. "He was everything to me. When he passed, I took over. Everyone doubted me, said I'd crumble under pressure. So I stopped giving them a reason to doubt. I worked harder. I cared less." Her lips trembled slightly as she continued. "I think I forgot what it felt like to have someone care about me without wanting something in return." Daniel looked at her, his expression soft but steady. "That sounds lonely," he said quietly. Ava blinked, caught off guard by the honesty in his tone. "It is," she admitted after a moment. "But loneliness is easier to control than disappointment." Before she could say more, a small figure appeared at the entrance of the restaurant. Lily, the little girl, clutched a teddy bear and looked around anxiously until she spotted her father. "Daddy!" she called out, running to him. The hostess tried to stop her, but Daniel quickly stood, kneeling to meet her halfway. "Sweetheart, what are you doing here?" he asked, surprised. Lily's eyes glistened. "I couldn't sleep without you," she whispered. The restaurant fell silent. Ava felt something break open inside her, a tenderness she hadn't felt in years. That simple whisper from a child carried more love than any grand gesture she'd ever known. And as she watched father and daughter embrace, the walls she'd built around her heart began, ever so slightly, to crack. The restaurant, once filled with the quiet hum of conversation and clinking glasses, seemed to fall into a hush as Lily wrapped her tiny arms around Daniel's neck. Her small voice carried through the air, soft but powerful, as she whispered, "I couldn't sleep without you, Daddy." It wasn't loud, but it was enough to reach Ava's ears and lodge itself deep in her heart. For a woman who lived in boardrooms, who was accustomed to power and polish, there was something profoundly human in that moment. She had sat across from executives who commanded billions, but none of them had ever stirred her soul like the sight of a little girl seeking comfort in her father's arms. Ava's throat tightened. She didn't know this feeling, this ache that wasn't pain, but something dangerously close to longing. Daniel looked mortified as he stood, trying to explain. "I'm so sorry," he said quickly, kneeling beside Lily. "You weren't supposed to come, sweetheart." Lily clutched her teddy bear and blinked up at him. "I wanted to make sure you weren't lonely," she said, her eyes wide and innocent. Ava felt her composure slipping. Without thinking, she rose from her seat and knelt down beside them. "Hey there," she said softly, smiling at the little girl. "You must be Lily. I've heard a lot about you." Lily's shyness melted at once. "You're the lady Daddy's having dinner with," she said, tilting her head curiously. "You look nice." "Daddy said you're smart." Daniel turned bright red, rubbing the back of his neck. "Lily," he muttered under his breath, half embarrassed, half amused. Ava laughed, a real, genuine laugh that startled even her. It was the kind of laughter she hadn't heard from herself in years. Light, unguarded, alive. The waiter, uncertain what to do, offered to bring Lily a small dessert. Soon enough, the three of them were sitting together at the table, sharing a slice of chocolate cake. Ava watched in quiet fascination as Lily animatedly told stories about school, about her teddy named Mr. Fluff, and how her dad made the best pancakes in the world. Daniel tried to apologize again for the interruption, but Ava shook her head. "Don't," she said gently. "She's lovely. You must be very proud." Daniel looked at his daughter, his voice soft. "She's my reason for everything." Ava felt her chest tighten again. There it was, a simple truth, unpolished and pure. As the night wore on, Ava realized how different this felt from any evening she'd had before. There was no performance here, no need to impress. Daniel didn't see her as the CEO of Sinclair Industries. He saw her as a woman, one who could listen, laugh, and be part of something real. When Lily began to yawn, Ava helped Daniel gather their things. As they stood at the restaurant's entrance, Lily tugged gently on Ava's hand and whispered, "Please don't make Daddy sad again." The words hit Ava like a wave. For a moment she couldn't speak. She knelt down and met Lily's eyes, her own glistening. "I promise I won't," she said softly. And as Daniel carried Lily out into the night, Ava stood there watching them disappear down the quiet street, realizing that one child's innocent whisper had reached a part of her heart she thought had died long ago. Weeks passed after that unforgettable night, yet Ava Sinclair couldn't shake the sound of Lily's whisper from her mind. "Please don't make Daddy sad again." The words replayed softly in her thoughts whenever she found herself staring out her office window, her reflection framed by city lights. Ava had spent years building walls around her heart, protecting herself from disappointment and betrayal. But somehow, a 6-year-old girl had slipped right through those defenses with one heartfelt sentence. She found herself smiling at the memory of Lily's laughter, the way Daniel's eyes softened when he looked at his daughter, and the warmth of that small-town restaurant that had felt more like home than her entire penthouse ever did. She told herself she was too busy to think about them, but the truth was, she wanted to see them again. It started innocently enough. Ava called Daniel to thank him for dinner, but her voice betrayed a hint of nervousness. "My car's been making a strange noise," she said, half lying. "Would you mind taking a look?" Daniel, though slightly surprised, agreed without hesitation. When she arrived at his modest auto shop the next day, wearing jeans instead of her usual tailored suits, she felt strangely nervous, like a teenager on her first date. Daniel greeted her with his signature warm smile, and Lily ran to her, hugging her legs as if they'd known each other for years. "Miss Ava." "Daddy made cookies," she said proudly, dragging her toward a small break room. Ava laughed, touched by the simple gesture. For the first time in a long while, she felt like she belonged somewhere. Not because of her name, but because of the way they made her feel. Days turned into weeks, and what began as friendly visits slowly blossomed into something deeper. Ava found herself coming by often, sometimes with lunch for Daniel, sometimes just to talk. She loved watching the way his hands moved when he worked, strong, steady, capable. Daniel, on the other hand, couldn't quite believe how easily Ava fit into their lives. Despite her elegance and success, she never acted superior. She would sit on the floor with Lily, helping her color or listening to her endless stories about princesses and cars. To Daniel, Ava wasn't the CEO of a multi-million-dollar company. She was simply Ava, the woman who laughed at his corny jokes and made his world feel lighter. One chilly evening, after closing the shop, they stood outside watching Lily chase fireflies in the dusk. The silence between them was peaceful, filled with the kind of understanding that didn't need words. Ava turned to him, her eyes soft. "Your daughter's whisper that night," she said quietly, "it changed me, Daniel. It reminded me what it feels like to be needed. Not just respected." Daniel looked at her, his gaze steady. "You've been needed for a long time, Ava. You just forgot how it felt." She smiled faintly, her heart swelling with emotion. As Lily ran back toward them, giggling, Daniel reached for Ava's hand and held it firmly. That night, Ava tucked Lily into bed at Daniel's house for the first time. The little girl yawned, snuggling her teddy bear, and looked up at Ava with sleepy eyes. "Does this mean you'll be my mommy someday?" she asked softly. Ava froze, tears welling up as she looked over at Daniel, who stood silently in the doorway. He didn't speak, but his gentle nod said everything. Ava brushed a strand of hair from Lily's forehead and whispered, "If you'll have me, sweetheart." Lily smiled, half asleep, and drifted off in peace. As Daniel wrapped an arm around Ava's shoulders, she rested her head against him, feeling, for the first time in years, not powerful or perfect, but whole. And under the quiet glow of the porch light, their story didn't end. It was just beginning. If this story touched your heart, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to Drew Daily Stories, where every story reminds you that love can find us when we least expect it.